The night Vivian Knox thought she was free was the night she discovered her biggest betrayal was yet to come. The storm outside rattled the windows of the old manor, but Vivian Knox hardly noticed. Her mind was far noisier than the thunder rolling across the night sky. She sat at her oak desk, the amber light of a single lamp casting shadows across a spread of old photographs, letters, and a leather-bound journal she had inherited only 3 weeks ago. The journal had belonged to her late mother, a woman Vivian had adored but never truly understood. On the surface, her mother had been the perfect portrait of grace and devotion. Yet within these handwritten pages, Vivian had discovered fragments of a life steeped in secrets, betrayal, and an unfinished story that now threatened to swallow her whole. Her fingers traced one line in particular, the ink faded but still legible. If they ever find out the truth about Knox Industries, we will all be destroyed. Trust no one, not even those closest to you. Vivian's breath caught. Knox Industries was her family's empire, the corporation her father built, and the very foundation of their wealth. To the world, it was a beacon of success. To her mother, it seemed it had been something far darker. She closed the journal, her pulse quickening. In the silence that followed, she heard someone, moving in the hallway outside her study. The sound was soft, deliberate, as though whoever it was didn't want to be noticed. Vivian rose quietly, her heart hammering. She knew she wasn't imagining it. Someone else was inside the house, and she wasn't sure if they had come for her, or for the secrets she had just uncovered. The sharp click of Vivian's heels echoed against the polished marble of the hotel lobby as she stepped inside, the warmth of the chandeliers above doing little to ease the tension that coiled within her chest. She had been here countless times for work, but tonight felt different, charged, uncertain, as if every step carried her further into a web she hadn't realized was being spun around her. At the reception desk, a young woman with a practiced smile greeted her. "Welcome back, Miss Knox. Your usual suite is ready." Vivian returned the smile politely, though her mind was miles away. She thanked the receptionist and accepted the key card, her fingers brushing against the cool plastic with a strange sense of finality. As she rode the elevator up, her reflection in the mirror-like walls stared back at her, calm, poised, but underneath, shadows lingered in her eyes. The suite was immaculate, just as she had expected. Fresh orchids on the table, crisp linens on the bed, a faint trace of lavender in the air. But something unsettled her. She couldn't pinpoint why at first, until her gaze fell on the envelope lying on the desk. White, unmarked, with her name handwritten across the front. Vivian froze. No one knew she was here. No one should. She picked it up, the paper whispering between her fingers, and slid her thumb under the flap. Inside was a single sheet of thick stationery with only a few words scrawled in ink. "Your past isn't buried. It's waiting." Her pulse quickened. The elegant script was unfamiliar, yet the weight of the words struck her like a blow. She gripped the edge of the desk, steadying herself as flashes of memories she had spent years suppressing threatened to break through. Before she could think, the phone in the suite rang. The shrill sound sliced through the silence, making her jump. She hesitated, staring at it, then lifted the receiver. "Ms. Knox," a man's voice said smoothly, almost too calm. "We should talk." She swallowed hard. "Who is this?" "That doesn't matter," the voice replied. "What matters is that you've been found. And you can't run forever." The line went dead. Vivian stood there, clutching the receiver, her heart thundering in her chest. Whoever this was, they knew something she had fought to bury deep within the recesses of her life. And if they had found her now, it meant her carefully constructed world was beginning to unravel. She lowered the phone slowly, her mind racing. Somewhere out there, someone was pulling strings, and she was at the center of it. The question was, what did they want? And how much longer could she keep her secrets from surfacing? The following morning, Vivian stood at the edge of her office window, watching the city pulse with its usual rhythm, cars darting, pedestrians rushing, the occasional siren cutting through the air. On the surface, everything looked ordinary, but inside her, The storm from last night's encounter had not quieted. The words, the man's eyes, the unspoken threat, each detail played over in her mind like an old film reel she couldn't turn off. She forced herself to get back to work, burying herself in spreadsheets and emails, but her phone buzzed unexpectedly. A message from an unknown number. You're walking into a web you don't see. Be careful who you trust. Her stomach tightened. Was this connected to the stranger she met last night, or someone entirely different? She stared at the message, her mind racing with possibilities. She had never given her number to anyone recently outside her closest circle. Was it a warning or a trap? Before she could dwell longer, her assistant knocked on the door. "Vivian, you have a visitor waiting in the lobby. He says it's urgent." "Did he give a name?" she asked, steadying her voice. The assistant hesitated. "Yes, of Mr. Callum Pierce." The name made Vivian's pulse quicken. She had heard of Callum Pierce before, an ambitious, dangerously charming corporate player with a reputation for toppling rivals without breaking a sweat. He was not a man who visited without motive. Minutes later, Callum stepped into her office, impeccably dressed, confidence radiating from every calculated movement. "Vivian Knox," he greeted with a slight smile. "I hope I'm not intruding." She motioned him to sit, though her instinct screamed caution. "To what do I owe this surprise?" He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I'll be direct. Last night wasn't a coincidence. The stranger you met, he's not who he pretends to be. And if you're not careful, he'll drag you into something that could destroy you." Vivian stiffened. "How do you know about last night?" Callum's gaze darkened, his voice carrying an edge of both warning and intrigue. "Because I've been watching the same people watching you. And unlike them, I don't intend to see you fall." For the first time, Vivian felt the ground beneath her shift. Who was lying, and who was protecting her? She searched his face for sincerity, but found only a mask of charm concealing something deeper. "Why me?" she whispered. Callum smiled faintly. "Because you've stepped into a story much larger than your own. And now, whether you like it or not, you're part of it." Her world tilted again, romance, danger, deceit, all blurring into one. And for the first time, Vivian realized that nothing in her life would ever return to the way it was before last night. The storm outside had only grown louder, hammering the city with furious winds and relentless rain, but inside the glass-walled apartment, the silence between Vivian and Adrian was deafening. The earlier tension from their unfinished conversation lingered like smoke, choking the air with unsaid truths. Vivian's heart pounded, not just with unease, but with a simmering ache she didn't want to name. Adrian moved closer, his sharp gaze fixed on her, the shadows carving deep lines along his face. "Vivian," he said, his voice low and deliberate, "you have no idea what you've stumbled into. You think this is about the deal, about the contracts, but it's much bigger than that." Her breath caught. She wanted to demand answers, to shake him until he finally broke through his wall of secrecy, but fear held her back. Fear of what she might learn, and fear of what it would mean for them both. "You're keeping things from me," she whispered, her tone laced with both hurt and defiance. "Every time I get close to the truth, you shut me out." "Why?" His jaw clenched. For a moment, he looked like a man torn apart by an internal war. Then, with an abruptness that startled her, Adrian reached into the inner pocket of his coat. Vivian's pulse quickened, dread crawling through her veins. He withdrew a small envelope, worn, sealed, and marked with an insignia she didn't recognize. He held it out to her, his hand trembling slightly. "Because the moment you open this," he said, his voice husky, "your life will never be the same. And I can't protect you anymore." Vivian stared at the envelope as though it might burn her fingertips. 1,000 questions roared in her mind. Why did he have this? What secrets could it possibly hold? And why now? Before she could speak, Adrian stepped closer, so close she could feel the heat of him. His expression softened, the storm in his eyes shifting into something more vulnerable. "Vivian, I never meant to drag you into this. But the truth is, I can't walk away from you." Her chest tightened, the world spinning between fear and longing. She wanted to believe him, wanted to surrender to the warmth flickering between them. But the envelope still sat between them like a loaded weapon. The thunder crashed, the lights flickered, and for one breathless second, Vivian thought the universe itself was warning her. She lifted her hand, reaching for the envelope, but just as her fingertips brushed the seal, a sudden pounding at the door shattered the moment. 3 sharp, urgent knocks that sent shivers down her spine. Adrian's head snapped toward the door, his expression shifting instantly into alarm. "They're here," he whispered harshly. "Who?" Vivian's voice cracked, panic flooding her veins. Adrian grabbed her hand and pulled her away from the table, his urgency undeniable. "There's no time to explain. Whatever happens, don't let go of me." The knocking turned into pounding, louder and more insistent, as if the door would splinter under the force. Vivian clutched the envelope against her chest, her heart racing faster than the storm outside. And just as the lock began to rattle, a chilling realization settled over her. She wasn't just entangled in Adrian's secrets. She was now a target. The storm outside had eased, but within Vivian Knox, the turmoil only grew louder. Her thoughts were a tangled mess, replaying the events of the gala like a haunting film reel. The masked stranger's warning echoed in her mind, cryptic words that felt like both a threat and a lifeline. "Be careful whom you trust. The truth is not where you think it is." She had left the ballroom early, claiming exhaustion, though in truth she had been rattled to her core. That night, in her penthouse apartment, she stood before the tall windows, staring out over the glittering city skyline. The city never slept, but Vivian felt unbearably alone. She poured herself a glass of red wine, her hand trembling as she raised it to her lips. Everything had been meticulously planned: her rise in the corporate world, her carefully balanced public image, even her budding romance with Adrian Blackwell, the charming venture capitalist who had swept her off her feet. Yet now, everything felt precarious, as if one wrong move could unravel the fragile threads she clung to. Her phone buzzed, shattering the silence. She flinched, then reached for it. A message appeared on the screen. "Unknown number, they are closer than you think. Don't let him blind you." Her breath caught. She read it again, her pulse racing. Who was sending these messages? And what did they mean by him? Her first thought was of Adrian. He had been nothing but attentive, protective even, since they'd met. But hadn't there been moments, small ones, that had seemed just a little too perfect? His well-timed appearances, his charm that always seemed tailored exactly to her mood? Vivian closed her eyes, trying to dismiss the doubt. But once planted, suspicion had a way of growing roots. The next morning, she arrived at her office earlier than usual. The Knox Foundation was her pride, a nonprofit dedicated to innovative urban renewal projects. She had built it from the ground up after years of struggle, and it was the one place she felt truly in control. Yet even here, whispers of unease followed her. Her assistant, Lila, entered with a stack of documents. "Morning, Vivian. You've got the board meeting at 9. Also," she hesitated, there was something odd. "A courier dropped this off. No sender details." She handed over a plain envelope. Vivian's hands felt heavy as she opened it. Inside was a single photograph. The image showed her at dinner with Adrian 2 weeks ago, an intimate moment, candlelight reflecting in their eyes. But across the photo, in thick black ink, was scrawled, "He is not who you think he is." Vivian's stomach lurched. Her knees weakened, and she gripped the edge of her desk to steady herself. "Who delivered this?" she demanded, her voice sharper than intended. Lila shook her head. I don't know. He was gone before security could ask." Vivian forced herself to breathe. The walls of her office suddenly felt too close, the windows too transparent. Whoever was watching her, whoever was pulling these strings, was close. Too close. And yet, beneath the fear, a darker emotion stirred. Curiosity. If Adrian wasn't who he claimed to be, then who exactly was he? She folded the photograph and slipped it into her desk drawer, her mind already working. There would be no confronting Adrian directly, not yet. She needed proof. Answers. And she would get them no matter what it cost. Vivian sat alone in the candlelit lounge of the old manor, her fingers tracing the rim of a half-empty glass of red wine. The storm outside had not relented. Rain lashed against the tall windows, and each rumble of thunder rattled the glass panes like an omen. Earlier that day, her conversation with Julian had left her with more questions than answers. He had confessed to knowing fragments of her family's hidden past, yet he had stopped himself mid-sentence, warning her that some truths could destroy everything she thought she knew. The fire crackled in the grand hearth, but its warmth did nothing to ease the chills spreading through her. She kept replaying his words in her mind. "There are secrets buried here, Vivian. Secrets your mother never wanted you to uncover." Her mother. The thought alone made Vivian's chest tighten. For years, the woman had been cold, secretive, controlling. Now it seemed there was a reason, a shadow she had never dared to reveal. Suddenly, the door creaked open. Vivian spun around, her pulse hammering in her ears. It was Julian, his shirt damp from the rain, his expression guarded yet urgent. "You shouldn't be here alone," he said, striding toward her. His presence filled the room, commanding yet strangely comforting. "I'm not afraid," Vivian replied, though her voice wavered. Julian studied her closely, then lowered himself into the chair opposite hers. "You should be. Someone has been watching you. I saw the figure again near the orchard, lurking." Her stomach dropped. "Are you saying they followed me here?" He hesitated before answering. "Yes. And I believe they're not here for me, but for you." The words pressed heavily on her chest. She wanted to deny it, but deep down she knew. The strange letters she had received, the shadows at night, the whispers that made her heart race, it was all connected. Julian leaned forward, his voice dropping low, almost a whisper. "You need to trust me, Vivian. I can protect you, but you have to let me in." Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the world outside seemed to fade. His gaze carried both strength and vulnerability, as though he bore his own ghosts. Against her better judgment, something inside her softened. Still, the questions burned. "Why you, Julian? Why are you the one who knows about my family's secrets? What are you hiding?" Before he could answer, a sharp crash shattered the moment. A window burst inward, glass scattering across the floor as the storm roared through the room. Both of them jumped to their feet, hearts racing. In the darkness beyond the broken window, a silhouette stood motionless. Watching. Vivian's breath caught in her throat, every nerve in her body screaming with fear. Julian moved instinctively, shielding her with his body. The figure vanished into the storm, but the message was clear. This was only the beginning. And as Vivian clutched Julian's arm, she realized the danger wasn't just outside. It was tangled deep within her family's past, a past that refused to stay buried. The cafe where Vivian had agreed to meet Sebastian was one of those discreet little places tucked into a narrow side street, lit by warm amber lamps that glowed against the fading twilight. The hum of distant traffic felt muted here, replaced by the soft clatter of porcelain cups and low, indistinct chatter. Vivian arrived a few minutes early, her heart drumming a nervous beat she could not calm. She had not told anyone about this meeting, not Evelyn, not even her closest confidant at the firm. Something about Sebastian made her guard waver, yet she wasn't sure whether it was trust or recklessness that had guided her decision. When he walked in, she noticed immediately. His presence carried a quiet command, the kind of gravity that drew attention without needing to ask for it. He spotted her quickly, and his expression softened as he made his way to the table. "You came," he said simply, sliding into the seat across from her. "I said I would," Vivian replied, her tone even though her palms felt damp. "But let's be clear, Sebastian, I don't have time for games." He leaned forward, his voice low. "Neither do I." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the silence stretching between them. Then Sebastian broke it. "I know what's happening around you, Vivian. And I know you've been searching for answers that no one wants you to find. But you're not safe, not with the truth you're circling." Her breath caught, but she didn't flinch. "Then tell me. If you know so much, Stop speaking in riddles and explain what I'm caught in. Sebastian studied her carefully, as though weighing how much he could trust her, or how much she could handle. What you're investigating isn't just about fraud or betrayal. It's about something bigger. Something that ties back to your family and to people who'd rather you never discovered it. The words lodged like ice in her chest. My family? She asked, her voice tighter than she intended. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he signaled for the waiter and ordered 2 coffees, as though grounding the conversation in normalcy before plunging deeper. Finally, he said, Vivian, your father was never the man you thought he was. And the people who ruined you, they didn't choose you by accident. They chose you because of him. Her throat went dry. She tried to summon words, but none came. The cafe seemed to fade, its cozy warmth dissolving into a void of dread. Why are you telling me this? She whispered. Sebastian's eyes softened, and for the first time, she saw something beyond his polished exterior, a flicker of vulnerability. Because I owe him. And because if you keep searching blind, they'll destroy you before you understand what you're walking into. Vivian leaned back, her pulse pounding. A strange mix of emotions surged inside her: fear, anger, disbelief, and the dangerous pull of trust toward a man who might very well be weaving lies. Still, something in her heart said otherwise. Something told her he was the only one who could unravel this labyrinth. You've just made things more complicated, she said, her voice breaking slightly. But if you're right, if all of this ties back to my father, then I need everything you know. Sebastian nodded. Then brace yourself, Vivian. Because once you know the truth, there's no turning back. And with that, he slid a small sealed envelope across the table. Her trembling hands hovered above it, her world teetering on the brink of revelation. The storm outside had only grown fiercer, sheets of rain slamming against the windows like relentless fists. Inside the mansion, the glow of chandeliers flickered under the weight of thunder, casting long, trembling shadows that mirrored the unease in Vivian's heart. Every step she took echoed like a drumbeat, as though the house itself was warning her not to go further. She moved carefully, clutching the small key she had found in the locked drawer of the study, an ornate brass key with strange engravings. She was certain it belonged to the hidden compartment Gabriel's letter had hinted at. The air grew heavier the closer she drew to the east wing, a part of the estate long abandoned. The door creaked open with a shrill protest. Dust swirled around her, carrying the scent of decay and secrets best left untouched. Her lantern illuminated torn drapes and faded portraits of men and women with hollow eyes, their painted gazes following her every move. And then she saw it, a cabinet half hidden behind collapsed beams. The lock was old, rusted, but the key in her hand slid in with an uncanny ease. The mechanism clicked, sharp and final, like the closing of a trap. Vivian hesitated, her pulse a wild storm inside her chest. For a heartbeat, she considered turning back, but it was too late. Curiosity had already won. The door creaked open. Inside lay stacks of letters bound with red ribbon, old photographs, and ledgers filled with numbers and names. But what froze Vivian was the photograph resting on top, one of Gabriel, standing beside a man she didn't recognize. His smile was warm, his arm casually draped around the stranger, but his eyes looked haunted. And then she noticed the letter tucked beneath it, marked with Gabriel's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, Vivian, then I've failed to protect you. Her breath caught. She clutched the letter, unfolding it with trembling fingers. There are forces in this house that will not rest until the truth is buried with us. Trust no one, not even those who claim to love you. The man you think you know is not who he pretends to be. Watch him. Watch closely. Her vision blurred, the words twisting into daggers that pierced her heart. Not who he pretends to be. Did Gabriel mean Elias, the man who had offered her protection, comfort, and stolen moments of aching tenderness? Or someone else entirely? The door slammed behind her. Vivian spun around, her lantern swaying, shadows stretching monstrously across the room. Her heart pounded as a figure stepped into view, cloaked in the storm's darkness. It was Elias. His face was unreadable, caught somewhere between sorrow and something far darker. His voice, low and edged with steel, broke through the crackle of thunder. "You shouldn't have found this, Vivian." Her stomach dropped. The key slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. "Elias," she whispered, her voice cracking under the weight of disbelief. "What have you done?" He stepped closer, his gaze locking onto hers. For the first time, she saw no warmth in his eyes, only a glimmer of something cold, something dangerous. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, silence pressed down like a suffocating shroud. The world had narrowed to this moment. Vivian, the secrets she had uncovered, and the man who stood between her and the truth. The morning after the explosion was eerily quiet, as though the city itself was holding its breath. Vivian Knox stood at her apartment window, staring out over the skyline, her reflection faint in the glass. Her body still ached from the chaos of the night before, her ears occasionally ringing with the echo of that blast. But her mind was sharper than ever, restless, piecing together fragments of the puzzle that had almost cost her life. The television murmured in the background, news anchors speculating about the explosion. Some blamed a gas leak, others whispered about terrorism. But Vivian knew better. This wasn't an accident. It was a message directed at her. Her phone buzzed on the counter, startling her. She rushed over and saw an unknown number flash across the screen. Heart pounding, she answered. "Vivian." The voice was low, strained, yet familiar. "You need to get out. They know where you are." Her pulse spiked. "Who is this?" she demanded. The line crackled. "No time. Trust me. Leave now. Don't use your car trackers. Head to the old railway yard on Lincoln Avenue. I'll explain everything." The call ended abruptly, leaving her in a chilling silence. She stared at the phone, the voice playing over and over in her head. It had sounded like someone she once knew, someone she thought had vanished from her life years ago. Vivian grabbed her coat, stuffing the flash drive, the one she had retrieved from the ruins of Adrian Cole's office, into her pocket. That drive was the key. She didn't know exactly what was on it yet, but she knew it was enough to make people kill. Stepping out into the hallway, she moved cautiously, aware of every shadow. Her neighbors' doors were shut, the silence of the building oppressive. As she descended the stairwell, her instincts prickled. A heavy bootstep echoed one floor below. Someone was waiting. Vivian's grip tightened on the railing. She turned back, climbing swiftly and quietly, darting into the corridor on the third floor. She raced down the hallway and shoved open the fire escape door. The metal staircase groaned under her weight as she descended into the alley, the cold morning air biting at her skin. From the corner of her eye, she saw movement, a figure in black stepping into the alley behind her. Her breath caught. They were fast closing in. Vivian sprinted, weaving between overflowing trash bins and shattered crates. Her lungs burned, but adrenaline carried her forward. She turned a corner and almost slammed into another figure. This one grabbed her arm, rough, firm, but then whispered urgently, "Don't scream. It's me." Her eyes widened. The man's face, though shadowed beneath his hood, was unmistakable. Lucas Hale. Lucas, the man she once loved, and the man she had believed dead. For a split second, the world froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. "What? How?" she stammered, her voice trembling with shock and rage. "No time," Lucas hissed, pulling her into the cover of a brick alcove. Footsteps thundered past, the pursuers unaware of their hiding place. "They'll kill you if we don't move now. And if you still have that drive, they'll never stop." Vivian's chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths, torn between disbelief and fury. Lucas was alive. He had faked his death, left her to mourn, to rebuild her shattered world alone. Her hand clenched into a fist. "You disappeared, Lucas. You let me think you were gone." His eyes, still that piercing blue that had once melted her resolve, held both guilt and urgency. I had no choice, Viv. I was deep inside this operation, deeper than anyone. If I had stayed, you'd have been the one buried in the ground. Her emotions tangled, anger, heartbreak, and a dangerous spark of relief. She should have hated him. She wanted to. But right now, he was the only one standing between her and death. Before she could answer, the distant sound of sirens wailed. The hunters weren't far behind. Lucas gripped her hand, pulling her toward the shadows at the edge of the street. Come with me. If you want the truth, if you want to end this, trust me just one more time. Vivian hesitated, her entire body trembling with indecision. But deep down, something in her still remembered the man who once fought beside her, who once swore to protect her. And against every screaming voice in her head, she let him lead her into the labyrinth of the city. The city was unnervingly quiet when Vivian stepped out of the taxi that night. Street lamps flickered like nervous heartbeats, throwing fractured pools of light across cracked sidewalks. She pulled her coat tighter, her mind still reeling from Damien's admission, the secret contract, the blackmail, the trail of lies that had linked him to her brother's death. Yet beneath her fury, another emotion clawed for space, betrayal mingled with longing. Because when Damien had looked at her, his voice raw with regret, part of her had wanted to believe him. But trust was a luxury Vivian could no longer afford. She reached the waterfront, the place Damien had begged her to meet him, the place he promised the final truth would be revealed. The air carried the sharp tang of salt and diesel. Fog rolled across the bay, swallowing sound, cloaking the rusting piers in ghostly shadow. A lone figure stood at the edge of the dock, his silhouette tall and steady. Damien. Vivian's heart hammered as she approached, every step echoing her own doubts. She kept her distance, the black water lapping hungrily beneath them. Vivian, Damien said, his voice carrying across the void like a confession. You weren't supposed to be dragged into this. I tried to shield you. Her laugh was sharp, bitter. Shield me? By deceiving me? By letting me walk blind into every trap you set. I had no choice. He stepped closer, desperation etched in every movement. They threatened you. Everything I did was to keep you alive. Vivian shook her head, her chest tightening. You've been lying since the beginning. Why should I believe a word now? Damien pulled a small device from his pocket, a flash drive. He held it out, trembling. Because this is everything. Every contract, every recording, every order they gave me. Proof. Take it. Expose them. Vivian didn't move. The fog pressed in, thick and suffocating. Somewhere in the shadows, a splash echoed, too deliberate to be the tide. Her instinct screamed. They weren't alone. You led them here, didn't you? She whispered, her voice breaking. Damien's eyes widened, genuine fear flashing across his face. No. I swear to you, Vivian, I didn't. A gunshot shattered the night. The flash drive slipped from Damien's hand, clattering across the dock. He staggered, clutching his side, blood seeping between his fingers. Vivian froze, her pulse a roar in her ears. Out of the fog, a second silhouette emerged, broad-shouldered, precise in every step. The man she least expected. Her breath caught as his face came into the dim light. Hello, Vivian, he said smoothly, his voice calm, cold, familiar. It's been a long time. Vivian sat in the shadow of the courthouse steps, the crisp autumn wind tugging at her coat, scattering brittle leaves across the marble. The verdict was only hours away, yet the weight of the past weeks pressed down on her chest like a stone. She thought of the sleepless nights, the documents she had unearthed, the hidden bank accounts she had tracked, the trail of encrypted messages she had cracked open with equal parts rage and brilliance. Every detail was now before the jury, every piece of betrayal laid bare. And yet there was fear, because betrayal was rarely simple. Across the street, she caught sight of Adrian. His tie was loosened, his once polished face drawn and pale. For years, he had been her partner, her anchor. She had loved him with the kind of trust that makes a person blind. Now, watching him pace like a trapped animal, she felt nothing but a cold ache. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You think you've won. But this goes deeper than Adrian. Be ready. Vivian's fingers tightened around the phone. The words sliced through her with the force of a blade. She had thought taking down Adrian was the endgame, but the message hinted at something darker, an unseen hand pulling the strings, orchestrating betrayal from the shadows. Her pulse quickened. If Adrian wasn't the mastermind, then who was? Inside the courthouse, the bailiff's voice called out, "All rise." Vivian stood, her mind burning with questions, her body trembling with a strange mixture of anticipation and dread. Whatever the verdict, she knew this wasn't the end. It was only the doorway to a larger war, and she was ready to walk through it. The courtroom was silent, so silent that Vivian could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. Across from her, Victor Moreau sat with his attorney, his polished mask of arrogance slipping inch by inch. His eyes darted nervously toward the jury, then back at Vivian, who sat tall and unflinching, her entire life's weight pressing on this single moment. The prosecutor displayed the final piece of evidence, the offshore accounts Victor had carefully hidden under false names. The money trail was undeniable, a thread leading directly from the company's drained coffers to his personal fortune. "Mr. Moreau," the prosecutor said firmly, "how do you explain this?" Victor's mouth opened, but no words came. His silence screamed louder than any denial could. Vivian's hands tightened around her notebook. Memories of her father's words returned. "If you stay silent in the face of corruption, you've already lost." She had carried those words like armor, and now she knew he was here with her. The judge's gavel struck once. "Guilty," she pronounced, her voice resounding like thunder. "Victor Moreau, you are hereby sentenced." Gasps filled the room. The verdict rippled through the crowd like a storm breaking. Some executives bowed their heads in shame. Others watched Vivian with something like awe. She hadn't just survived. She had dismantled a tyrant. Victor's composure finally shattered. He slammed his fists on the table, spitting venom in her direction. "You think you've won? You'll regret this, Vivian." But his words held no power anymore. Guards moved in to restrain him, his threats echoing hollowly against walls that no longer belonged to him. Vivian exhaled, her chest heaving. For the first time in years, she felt the crushing weight lift from her shoulders. She stood, her spine straight, her voice calm yet commanding. "No, Victor. The only one who should regret is you for underestimating me." The courtroom broke into murmurs, then applause. Outside, the city's air tasted different, fresh, alive, almost new. The press swarmed her, but she walked through them with a quiet grace, her name now forever tied not to scandal, but to courage. Later, standing on the balcony of her office, the office that was rightfully hers, Vivian looked out over the skyline, the lights shimmering like 1,000 promises. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a force. And deep in her chest, where grief and rage once lived, a new fire burned, not just for herself, but for every silenced voice she had now given strength to. Vivian Knox had risen, and she would never fall again.